Whenever a game comes along, gets your interest with a demo, and then the full title drops and blows that demo out of the water, you know you got a winner on your hands. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel.
Metal Slug Tactics.
Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including coverage of brand new, just released tactical RPGs such as the new released Metal Slug Tactics, the topic of this video, then a like on said video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. So yes, if you did not know, because there definitely isn't any other major events going on that could affect world politics that I don't feel like talking about today, if you're watching it on release, then yeah, there's something else going on that I care about a little bit more, and that is the release of Metal Slug Tactics. This is, of course, the first entry in a tactics sense for the Metal Slug series. It is also the first game in the series that I have played, and while it is a roguelite, and there are some people who were turned off by that, after 20 hours of early play, thank you to the devs for granting me a key early, I can say, this one's good. This one's real good, y'all. I've spent a very good chunk of time with the game now, learned that there's even more previously unrevealed characters available for you to play as, a ton of additional systems and meta progression. Just really, I overall am very, very impressed. If that's all that you want to hear, then fair enough, you can click off the video now, but I highly recommend that you stick around to hear my full thoughts and all that sweet new info that we know now that the game is finally here. Today I'm going to be going over my general impressions of the full title based on what I've been able to play thus far. This is not a comprehensive review. I've not had the full opportunity to play enough of the game for that yet, but I've wanted to go through what my experience has been, why I feel so positive about the game, as well as give you guys some insight into some of the new information that I've been able to learn from playing the game that was not necessarily revealed to us prior to release. I have lots of plans to do more in-depth tips videos, character guides, a review eventually, all that type of stuff, but today we're going over the broad strokes here. Now, as I mentioned, roguelites, they can be hit or miss for a lot of people. I am one of those people, and I was kind of concerned when we learned that Metal Slug Tactics was going to be one. My biggest critique against Darkest Dungeon 2, for example, was the shift to the roguelite formula, but unlike with Red Hook, Like Here Studios and publisher Dotemu kind of took the systems and pace of the genre and used it far, far better than Darkest Dungeon 2 did. A run can take anywhere from around 45 minutes, if not less, once you kind of get optimal, to an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe even more, if you're clearing every region or are playing on higher difficulties. Speaking of which, I've played primarily on the lowest difficulty at this point, specifically because I was trying to unlock characters, though my most recent few runs have all been on higher difficulties, and I can say for sure that the difference becomes stark very quickly. You have a bunch of new different types of enemies, higher rank enemies show up earlier, more difficult mission objectives start happening, and that's only going up one difficulty tier. I can only imagine how much more strategically minded you're going to have to be once you start maxing out the difficulty curve. Speaking of characters, I have all but one character unlocked currently, Leona, and counting her, her fellow Akari fighters Clark and Ralph, the original Metal Slug cast of Marco, Fio, Aria, and Tarma, and the previously secret Trevor and Nadia, the cast of pretty dang meaty 9 members. Although notably, there is still a cheeky slot at the bottom of the roster here. I think I might smell a hidden unlock as a result, but we'll have to see. It feels a little bit too perfectly conspicuous of an open spot there. We'll see. But yeah, I'm really impressed with the difference in play styles for each character thus far. Everyone has a base set of weapons, then other sets that they can unlock, and each of these sets have entirely different firing patterns and effects for their guns, single target, long-range shot handguns with maybe an assault rifle or a knife and a shotgun, or even down to like a knife and a laser rifle that pierces things, or a grenade launcher that hits in a specific X pattern, etc., etc. There's a lot of different options here for your guns, and each of these default sets also comes with a particular set of default skills, so you can kind of start building from that point as almost a class between each of your different characters. Note, while any character can gain access to the full range of their unlocked skills over the course of a run as they level up and earn new ones, having certain ones unlocked by default and the fact that you can't swap your weapons mid-run really does give the idea that each of these different sets is a different class or playstyle for each character, which is going to lead to a lot of replayability. Even if you're not a particular fan of their only quote-unquote being 9 characters, when each of those characters can have such a distinct playstyle, like Fio having a movement and killing streak focused build versus a more medic focused build, just as an example, means that you're going to have a lot of variety even within those characters. And of course, with build crafting and team building, you have the potential to make a lot of busted combos. For example, one of my most memorable builds that I wound up having going on was that, as I previously mentioned, I had this really insane kill streak focused Fio build going on, where she was getting bonus actions and movements very regularly, either from using her personal skill to move herself or her allies around the battlefield, or from executing an enemy and getting an action back as a result. Combine this with Eri, who I had set up with a really nasty, free-firing long-range grenade launcher, and I was able to set up huge chunks of enemies to be able to get sync attacked and get a bunch of kills very, very quickly, while then also leaving some at low health so that I could keep using Fio's stacking bonus actions and bonus moves to bop around and execute guys. Combine that with the fact that she was getting an extra point of damage on her attacks for the turn every time she finished something off, and she was just one-shotting things. I didn't even need sync attacks or weakened enemies after a certain point. It was an insanely fun build, and it's not one that I was expecting at all from Fio, who seemed more support-focused at first, but it goes to show how you can very easily start to get into situations where complementary skills on your different characters can make previously really difficult maps or high-density amounts of enemies way easier to navigate. And I can only imagine how much more in-depth it's going to get once you have all the different character sets, all of their different abilities unlocked. It's going to be absolutely insane. Of course, in traditional roguelike or roguelite fashion, as you progress through missions and complete objectives, your characters will level up. You'll get different skill unlocks for each of them that are randomly selected, and you can choose which ones you want to get on them. You'll have different weapon upgrades that you can find that you can then pay money in between stages to upgrade further. You'll find other special abilities that kind of sit on the side of your screen to deploy a metal slug or give everyone a full heal or extra actions. There's a lot of different kind of deltas of power that you'll be able to hit at different points in a run that let you really lean into or away from certain types of builds and play styles, which is very, very nice. This can range from everything from just getting more max ammo in a gun to making it so it completely ignores cover, or maybe if it originally, say, had a grenade launcher, as I mentioned on Eri, that only could fire in straight lines. What if you could just fire it wherever within her range now? And that is such a huge power boost for her. It's not just, well, get +1 damage here, get +1 range here. Like, there's actually different functional mechanical changes that you can just find that can completely redefine the way that you're using a character or the entire flow of a campaign. Like, getting that ability to target anywhere I wanted to with Eri's grenade launcher was massive for my ability to set up sync attacks and clear big groups of enemies that I might not have had the maneuverability to do otherwise. And that was just one upgrade. Take into account that there's the same versions of upgrades that you can then get, like higher quality access or upgrade them specifically again with coins. Like, you can really get some fun stuff going on. Now, as far as the different extra regions and bosses that we weren't able to see in the demo, there's a lot of variety here as well. We saw a little bit of this in trailers and things, the jungle level, the desert level with all the mummies and zombies, the standard desert level, the city. Like, there's a lot of different types of terrain with different sort of stage modifiers and features. Like, in one map, you'll be able to drop a crane on enemies to deal damage to them, whereas in another, if you walk next to a sarcophagus, a mummy will pop out and attack you, or maybe you can activate a cobra in a jar by shooting at it and then it'll bite any enemies that come through the area. Or maybe there's just a particular area like the jungle zone where you have way more verticality, so characters who like to be able to jump around and make use of that type of terrain like Eri will have way more of an advantage than in more level flat areas like the Argon Desert. So it's nice to see that there's actually different levels of terrain feature, which is something that other games like Into the Breach, that Metal Slug Tactics is definitely very heavily based on, don't have a lot of, and it feels lacking as a result. Here, though, absolutely phenomenal. I love it. Each of the bosses are all taken, as far as I know, from different games in the Metal Slug series, and they've been a ton of fun. They look great, they're dynamic, they're scary looking, but sadly on lower difficulties, even though they are really cool, I haven't really seen what they're able to do because it's so easy to just burst them down with mass fire. Now, as I've been getting to higher difficulties, this is becoming less of a downside for me because I can definitely see how you're not going to be able to just do that. You actually have to engage with mechanics and navigate around attacks. But for right now, when you're playing on the initial difficulties, getting characters and skills unlocked, don't be surprised if you burn through bosses pretty quickly. It definitely gets scarier and, to me, more engaging as you go up in difficulty levels, which is a big plus for me. Now, I mentioned the way that you can unlock skills and abilities and weapon perks throughout a run, but what does the meta progression look like? Well, it functions on two axes, basically. You either are unlocking new skills and weapon sets and weapon upgrades to show up in later runs with the currency that you earn from completing runs, or you get achievements for doing certain things, like hitting 5 enemies with 1 attack with Aerie, or getting a 4-man chain kill with Theo or something. Those aren't exact, but it's the kind of thing that you can expect. And then that is going to give you new weapon sets or potentially unlock other characters, that type of thing. Now, as far as unlocking new characters is concerned with achievements, like, yeah, that is how you do it, but the characters are so easy and quick to unlock that that's a sense of progression that you're very quickly going to max out. Even the character that is, quote-unquote, the hardest to get, Leona, is only difficult in any way because you need to beat a run with all 8 other characters to get her. And that's not even hard, it's just time-consuming. So while that is a sense of progression that you can expect to have, not really going to be the same level of engaging as it is to be spending time and in-game currency to unlock skills and weapons and things like that. Of course, the gameplay still feels just as good as it did in the demo, but with even more options. You're running, you're jumping, you're taking cover, you're setting up huge sync attacks. It's gameplay that just flows, and now that I've got the chance to spend more time with it and have more of an understanding of how the game expects you to play, I get it more. There was a couple points during my initial coverage of the demo where it felt a little awkward trying to get sync attacks set up, trying to have the maneuverability that I needed to deal with enemies in the time frame that I needed to. But I think, again, between my own personal experience and then I feel some difficulty tweaks maybe, it's way easier to build that understanding and then see the different paths that you can follow to success on any given map. In particular, I love the fact that weapons have very defined firing lines until you get like an upgrade that can break that, because it means that your positioning is very important. Like actually paying attention to where you're moving your characters to guarantee, okay, well, if I have Marco shoot at this guy, then Theo will be able to follow up, but then at the same time, there's a target for Theo to attack that Aerie will then be able to follow up, and that still leaves people in a position where they're not going to be easily targeted by enemies, or where I've moved them far enough that they get enough adrenaline to use their skills or are able to move into cover. There's a lot of play with movement in Metal Slug Tactics. It's very important that you pay attention to, and it's nice to see that. There's too many tactics and strategy games out there where it's just like, always move as far as you can, or always just stay slightly outside of the range of the enemy. Now, the game wants you to run and gun. It wants you to be pushing aggressively, but also intelligently, so you don't get yourself blown up, which is awesome. The adrenaline system is way easier for me to understand now as well. Basically, just move as far as you can intelligently. You'll get more adrenaline. You can use more special skills. And with all the new modifiers and the fact that you can progress through a full run, I'm able to see more how you're going to really be able to make your skills work for you with upgrades and with building into them over time. I got to the point with Marco where I was able to essentially use all of his abilities for free just due to adrenaline refunds and bonus actions. So I had pretty much my entire team stacked up with Marco Volley so that each of their attacks would get a free second attack or free second shot in there with it when they next attacked, which is obviously such a massive multiplication in damage. And having that able to be online all the time because of the way I was using him, because of the way that I built him, felt awesome. Now, of course, with all of these really cool attacks, weapons, bosses, stages, you got to expect that the visuals and the audio are going to be really good, right? Especially since that's one of the long-standing legacies of Metal Slug. Like, I don't know the mainline series, really, beyond the fact that I know that those games are beautiful and their soundtracks are banging. And man, just like with the demo, let me tell you, that tradition is being maintained here with Metal Slug Tactics. There is so much life and personality in every animation, even just every idle sprite animation. Characters go flipping around and flying and dodging. Every special ability has a fun little animation that's featured in it. All of the characters, even though they're just tiny little sprites, are so expressive. Big, overdramatic screams and wide eyes and looking and giving you a thumbs up at the camera. They're all you feel like you get to know these characters, even though they are just tiny little sprites. And the way they interact with the world and the maps around them also feels really good. All the different enemies have a bunch of different death animations, attack animations. They do silly things as they're running around. But then you also have big, beautifully crafted, terrifying boss enemies that have so much mechanical detail. They feel like they have such impact when they move, when they jump around, when they attack. And, you know, partially that's visual design, partially that's audio design, but it comes together in a package that is just phenomenal. I think the biggest thing for me, though, is when you're actually at base, either prior to starting a run or in between major levels or sections of the map during a run. There's so many little Easter eggs, so many little hidden fun details on each of these maps, and they evolve over time. Like the main base, when you're choosing your characters to go out on a mission, as you complete objectives, runs, achievements, not only do you get more characters who then chill in the base and have their own little section where they're having a fun time eating some food or practicing at the targeting range or playing a video game or what have you, and they have a bunch of different animations that go into that. Someone wins at their game or loses at their game and they have a reaction to it. A character might pull out random different food items to eat. Someone accidentally knocks over a fence and puts it back. There's a ton of little just detail animations like that. But then the base itself fills out as well. It gets posters and trophies and little references to things that you've already done in the game. And it makes it feel like, even though it's not like a direct gameplay mechanical progression, it's still exciting to see that the base has changed a little bit as you go through runs, which I think is really important for a game that expects you to do as many runs as you will in a roguelite like this. And again, now, obviously the visual design I'm praising a lot here, but the audio design is just as good. All of the weapon sound effects are phenomenal. Bullets feel punchy, explosions are loud, character death screams are very arcadey and classic. All of the music is phenomenal. Like, I could sit and bop to all of the music in this game. Just as a video game soundtrack, it's definitely something I'm going to have on in the background when I'm like editing something or painting minis or something like that. It just really slaps. And there's enough variety there through each of the different maps and each of the different sections of the game that it has not felt old or tired at all. Like, you know, sometimes you'll be playing a game and you're like, yep, I've heard that death screen for the 50th time, I'm tired of it. Oh, well, this track, like, maybe the other tracks are good, but this one's a little bit of a downer. I haven't felt that with anything on the OST design or the sound effects design. It's just been all ups. And again, given how important that legacy is to the series, I think it's really, really important that they nailed that. Now, of course, as I always try to do, we've had a lot of praise and very much deserved for Metal Slug Tactics, but I do want to bring some potential little issues and problems to light, just because, you know, these are things that I'd either like to see fixed, or they might just be gameplay features that you don't like. It might be a negative for you. So, first off, if you just don't like roguelites, you're probably not going to like this. I'm sorry. Even if you are a big tactics fan, if you're not the type of person that is okay with going back through levels that you've been through before, even if each individual map in them is going to be either handcrafted or procedurally generated and have a bunch of different options with a bunch of different objectives, or you don't like fighting the same bosses or not having like major story progression, like a narrative experience, like you're going to see in more standard traditional turn-based strategy, tactics type stuff, you're probably going to have issues with this, and there's just really no getting around that. That's a genre issue, not really a design of Metal Slug Tactics issue, which is unfortunate. Also, bosses, again, can get a little samey after a while. It does depend, I think, on as you get up to higher difficulties, if they actually get new mechanics or new features for their fight, or if they just get tankier with scarier enemies, because, like, if there's not something to shake up the formula of how each one operates, even on higher difficulties, it probably won't take too long for most people to figure out the quote-unquote formula to handle them the most efficiently, and then each of those end-of-map experiences will feel like a little bit of a bummer. I don't know, I haven't gotten far enough to say if this is going to be a recurring or actual issue at all, but I'm just worried about it as a possibility. We'll have to see how it shakes out. There also were a few bugs that were present, although this very well may have just been stuff for the press build that could be fixed now with the full release. There were a few character and skill descriptions that were missing and just had placeholder text, specifically on enemies in the jungle zone. I didn't really see it anywhere else, but that is something that obviously needs to be fixed, because like you need to know how enemy characters are going to function if you're going to form a good plan without getting yourself blown up. And then there were also some like visual bugs on some skills. Nadia, for example, has mines that her little robot friend can drop, and sometimes they just kind of would drop underneath him, even though he was supposed to throw it further away, and then it would just kind of like slide over to where it was supposed to be. Very minor little thing, not a huge deal, but it would be nice to see fixed. The big one that I ran into that was actually quite annoying was there was one time where the game couldn't tell what height my character was on. Like, either there's different elevations, and you can only attack with the type of weapon that he was using on an elevation that is equivalent to yours. So even though he was obviously supposed to be standing directly next to an enemy character that he could attack, the game didn't know where he was supposed to be, so he just couldn't attack at all. And I had to just kind of undo my turn and go to a different area. It didn't prevent me from playing. It didn't stop me from winning the mission. But when you have a carefully laid out plan, and then the game just doesn't know where your character is supposed to be, and you can no longer execute on that plan, it doesn't feel great. All told, though, the bugs were relatively few and far between, and I imagine pretty minor to fix, so I don't think it's a huge problem. It's more just going to come down to, do you like roguelites? Are you willing to give this game a chance, even if you're maybe not a fan of the genre? And it might be a deal breaker for you. Overall, though, I'm loving Metal Slug Tactics way more than I expected to. Like, I knew that I would enjoy it. I knew that I would spend some time with it. I did really enjoy the demo, but I've been sucked into this in a way that I really wasn't expecting. Like, for those of you who don't know, watching this on release, I was in Japan for 2 weeks, and then Jane and I, my girlfriend, got back and immediately found a new apartment that we've been prepping to move into and now have just moved into. If my video or my audio sounds a little echoey, it's because my studio is not really set up yet to have perfect mic quality, so apologies for that. But even with that in mind, I've still managed to find the time to put 20 hours into this game because I'm just enjoying it that much. So I don't really know if you need a better endorsement than that, but I think it's the best one that I can give. Really, at the end of the day, the devs at Like Here Studios and the publishers at .emu, they knocked this one out of the park. It was definitely well worth the wait. The years of not hearing anything, it was well worth it. If you're at all on the fence, you can check out the demo. I know at the very least the demo is on Steam, and I imagine it's on all the other platforms as well. And just know I highly recommend it based on first impressions alone. The platforms that the game is launching on, and well, is out now on, are Steam, Game Pass, Switch, and all of the current and last-gen PlayStation and Xbox systems, so more likely than not, you have a platform that you can play this on. I'm planning on playing way more of it, both on and off stream, so if you're curious about what some of the other things I didn't talk about entail, you can see my streams going up fairly regularly now that I've finished moving in. And I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I have a lot of other video ideas that I'd like to do, and if you have a suggestion on one that you'd like to see me do about the game, you can drop it in the comments. At the end of the day, this has been a great entry point to the series for me. I'm definitely considering going to check out the mainline games now as well. I need to wrap up this video so I can go play more of it. So, of course, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if you have played or are planning to play Metal Slug Tactics and what your thoughts about it are. And more importantly than anything else, I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other, everybody. Bye now.